Tonight, I'm sharing a case that looks like a simple app glitch until you realize it can be used as a weapon. A young woman named Maya books a ride home after a late shift, but the car never arrives. And yet her phone suddenly says trip started. Minutes later, it says trip completed, her card is charged, and the app insists she traveled miles, while her GPS proves she never moved. No CCTV catches the car. The driver account changes like it's being edited live, and the pickup pin, it was quietly shifted into a camera blind spot behind the building. So here's the question. If a ride can start without a car, can someone make a person disappear the same way? Stay with me because the deeper we go, the more it feels like this wasn't one crime, it was a method.
At 11:41 p.m., Maya finished a late shift and booked a ride home. The app assigned a driver, Armin, with a black sedan and a plate number, and everything looked normal, so she texted her friend Rafi that she was leaving. But minutes passed and no car arrived. Then her phone buzzed, trip started. Maya was still standing outside the building, alone. When she tried to cancel, the button was grayed out. A second alert popped up, a new stop added on Riverside Road, something she never selected. She called the driver through the app. One ring, then silence. At 11:52 p.m., her card was charged, and by 11:54 p.m., the screen said, "Trip completed. Rate your driver." The ride claimed 8.6 kilometers in 11 minutes, yet her phone's GPS showed she hadn't moved an inch. Rafi checked the details and noticed something even stranger. The driver's profile photo briefly changed, like the account updated live. When police later reviewed street cameras along the supposed route, no black sedan appeared anywhere, only one shadowy vehicle passing for a few seconds with its headlights off. The ride company's logs revealed the pickup point wasn't the front gate at all, but a pin dropped behind the building near a service entrance, and the driver account had been created just days earlier using an ID that no longer matched their records. That's when the case turned from glitch to method. Someone had found a way to start and finish rides remotely, to create a perfect digital alibi, one that could make a person disappear while the app insisted they were already on their way home.
Rafi refused to let it end there. He filed a missing person report and went back to the building to reconstruct Maya's last minutes, step by step. The security guard insisted Maya never got into a car at the front gate, but when they checked the cameras again, there was a problem. The service corridor behind the building, the one staff used for deliveries and late exits, had no working CCTV at all. Police requested back-end data from the ride company and discovered the pickup wasn't where Maya had placed the pin. It was shifted about 30 meters, just far enough to land inside that blind spot. Even worse, the plate number on the trip didn't belong to a black sedan. It belonged to a white van registered in a different part of the city. The company claimed the driver account had been active for only 3 days, created with documents that passed automated checks, then wiped almost immediately after Maya's trip was marked complete. As detectives dug deeper, the pattern started to repeat. 3 similar reports from other neighborhoods, rides that started without arriving, cancellations disabled, a surprise stop added, then a trip completed with a clean-looking route that cameras couldn't confirm. Someone wasn't just exploiting the system, they were using it like a tool, moving the pickup into CCTV dead zones, creating fake driver identities, and leaving behind a digital paper trail that suggested victims had willingly left in a car that may never have existed. When investigators pushed for answers, the ride company admitted something they didn't like to talk about. There was a testing tool used by dispatch and engineers, an internal emulator that could create dummy rides to check routing, payments, and driver availability. It was supposed to be locked behind high-level access, but the logs showed someone had used it late at night to inject real-looking trips into the system, complete with a driver name, a moving route, and an automatic payment charge, even if no driver ever physically picked anyone up. Then, one detail cracked the case wide open. Maya's phone history showed a brief Bluetooth connection at 11:43 p.m. to a device named Ride Test 01. Not a car, not headphones, a testing tag, something you'd expect in a development lab, not on a dark street behind an office building. Police began to suspect the ghost ride wasn't meant to transport Maya at all. It was meant to erase her last trace, to make it look like she'd left voluntarily, and to buy the attacker time while everyone argued about whether she was even missing. By the time the app declared the trip completed, Maya's real path, whatever happened in that blind spot, had already been swallowed by the night, leaving only one question that wouldn't go away. If a ride can be completed without the passenger, how many people have vanished while the system quietly insisted they were already on their way home? In the days that followed, detectives treated every part of the trip like evidence because someone had gone out of their way to manufacture it. They subpoenaed the company's access records and found a short burst of activity from an employee login that should never have been used outside office hours. The account belonged to a low-level contractor who claimed his credentials had been borrowed by a supervisor for a late-night task. That supervisor denied it, but his keycard logs showed he'd entered the dispatch office at 11:20 p.m. and left at 12:10 a.m., right in the window of Maya's disappearance. When police searched his desk, they didn't find a weapon or a trophy. They found something worse. A handwritten list of addresses, all marked with the same note: back entrance, no camera. Each location matched a previous ghost ride report. It wasn't random, it was selection, and it explained the fake pickup pin. It wasn't designed to find Maya specifically, it was designed to catch anyone who stepped into a blind spot alone. The company tried to argue it was a glitch, a billing error, anything that sounded harmless. But the pattern was now too clean to ignore. The driver accounts all shared the same creation method, the same short lifespan, the same device fingerprint. And the routes always looked perfect on the app, smooth lines, believable turns, yet they were almost invisible in the real world because the pickups and first turns happened in places cameras couldn't see. When investigators finally traced the emulator connection, it led to a cheap device hidden near the service corridor, a small transmitter taped under a railing, broadcasting that same Bluetooth name, Ride Test 01, like a lure. Maya's phone hadn't connected by accident, it had connected because it was close enough to the trap. And that raised the final, chilling possibility. The Ride app wasn't just being hacked to fake trips. It was being used to control the story after the crime, locking victims into a digital timeline that made them look in transit, delaying panic, delaying police, delaying help. As the case file grew thicker, one detective wrote a note in the margin that nobody could argue with anymore. The ride was never the crime. The ride was the cover. Rafi couldn't shake the feeling that the trip wasn't just fake, it was designed. As detectives dug deeper, they discovered every ghost ride followed the same pattern. The trip began within minutes of booking, the cancel button was disabled, and the route looked believable on the map even when cameras showed no matching car, almost like the system was generating a simulation instead of tracking a vehicle. The ride company tried to downplay it as an account issue, but privately admitted there were internal testing tools used by engineers in dispatch, tools that could inject rides into the system for troubleshooting, and someone had apparently used one after hours. 2 nights later, Rafi returned to the building and walked toward the dark service entrance where the pickup pin had been shifted. His phone suddenly buzzed with a Bluetooth pop-up from a nearby device named Ride Test 01. Then the alert vanished as if it had never existed. The next morning, police searched the area and found no device, only fresh adhesive under a sign, like something small had been removed in a hurry. The same day, a suspicious contractor login appeared in the company's access records. But the contractor insisted his credentials had been borrowed for a late-night test and refused to say by whom. Then another report came in from across town, a different victim, the same ghost ride pattern, the same kind of camera blind spot near a service entrance. Rafi started keeping his own timeline of screenshots, timestamps, and locations, knowing Maya's last movement was still just a line of text on a screen. Until one evening, he received a new ride receipt from Maya's account, dated today, and for a split second, the pickup pin loaded behind a building he recognized with a chill. The police station. The driver name flickered, the vehicle details changed mid-load, a perfect route line began drawing itself across the map, and then the entire trip disappeared from her history like it never happened. Seconds later, Rafi's phone rang from an unknown number. He answered, heard only slow breathing, then a soft click. Standing frozen with the dark street reflected in his window, Rafi realized the message wasn't about a glitch anymore. It was a warning that someone could start a trip without a car, erase it without a trace, and was now watching whoever tried to prove it. The next morning, Rafi brought everything to the lead detective. Screenshots, timestamps, the vanished receipt, even a screen recording showing the trip history refreshing and then wiping itself clean. The detective didn't look surprised. He looked tired, like he'd been expecting this. He admitted something he hadn't said out loud yet. The case wasn't just about Maya, it was about access. Someone had the kind of control that didn't belong to a driver or a passenger, and every time police got close, the digital trail seemed to rearrange itself. They tried a trap, using a decoy account, booking rides near the same type of service entrances, placing plainclothes officers in the blind spots, and monitoring the system in real time. For hours, nothing happened. Then, at 11:39 p.m., the decoy phone buzzed. Driver assigned. At 11:41 p.m., before the driver could possibly arrive, the screen changed to trip started. The cancel button turned gray. A stop was added automatically, and on a nearby camera, a dark vehicle rolled past with its headlights off for just long enough to be missed, unless you were watching for it. Officers ran toward the service entrance, but the corridor was empty, only the smell of damp concrete and the faint echo of footsteps that could have been theirs or someone else's. Back at the command van, the technician tracking the app went pale and pointed at the system log. The trip wasn't being started from the driver's device at all. It was being started from an internal admin session. A location ping flashed on the screen, not from the street, but from a building. The ride company's building. And just as the detective reached for a warrant, the log entry deleted itself, leaving behind a single line that didn't make sense. Test completed. That night, the detective made a call he didn't want to make, because the case had moved beyond street crime and into something buried in paperwork. A warrant team raided the ride company's dispatch office before dawn and seized computers and access logs. But the IT manager slowed everything down with procedure. Still, a forensic analyst uncovered a hidden admin dashboard, one that could disable cancellations, shift pickup pins, and simulate a moving route without any driver. It didn't belong to a person, only a role. Operations testing. The log showed it had been used during every ghost ride, and the connection didn't come from any office computer. It came through a remote tunnel, bouncing across disposable servers. When the detective demanded a list of everyone with access, the company handed over names, except one was partly redacted for privacy. Then the analyst turned his screen around. A new ghost ride had just been created, and the pickup pin loaded on a place Rafi recognized instantly. His own street. Rafi went home with police parked nearby and didn't sleep. At 11:37 p.m., his phone flashed. "We've improved your safety settings." At 11:39, another alert. "Confirming pickup location." He opened the app and saw a trip forming under his name. Driver assigned, route drawing itself. Then the cancel button grayed out. A stop appeared with 2 words, service entrance. He called the detective and held the phone up. The in-app call line hummed like it was already open. Then the screen changed to trip started, even though he hadn't moved. Outside his window, a dark vehicle rolled past with its headlights off for a heartbeat, then vanished. Seconds later, trip completed, rate your driver. And one last message appeared like a warning. You're looking in the right place, wrong person. By sunrise, Rafi Street was full of patrol cars, but the trip had vanished like Maya's did. No driver profile, no route history, no pickup pin, just a normal-looking receipt that could belong to anyone. The detective pushed the ride company for raw logs and backup records, and that's when the stories stopped sounding like a glitch and started sounding like control. The hidden admin role, operations testing, had been used again, and the login didn't come from any office computer. It came through a remote tunnel, bouncing across disposable servers, set up to vanish the moment someone traced it. Even the ride company's answers kept changing. First, it never happened, then it was a sync error, then it was legacy tools, as if the truth depended on how hard police were listening. Over the next few days, the city grew cautious. People stopped waiting at service entrances and started recording their screens before stepping outside. The company pushed out a safety update, but it didn't fix the real problem. Because the real problem wasn't a driver, it was whoever could start and finish rides without a car and erase the record afterward. Maya remained missing, and now Rafi realized the pattern wasn't just hunting victims, it was reacting to investigators, moving one step ahead every time someone got close. Then one night, Rafi opened the app and saw something flicker in the trip history for half a second, a new ride entry with a blank passenger ID and no profile photo. The pickup pin loaded slowly, then snapped into place in another back entrance across town, another blind spot. Before he could screenshot it, the entry disappeared and the app asked him to refresh. He didn't. He just stared at the screen, because the message was clear. This wasn't over. And whoever was behind the ghost rides wasn't hiding anymore. They were reminding him they could do it again.